The Florida Gators Pro Day is today, and we've got quite a few Gators that I think are going to make themselves some money. We're going to talk about it here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Thursday. Happy Pro Day. I'm Brandon Olson. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find my written work with Whole Nine Sports and Giants Country of SI.com. And as you can see, if you're watching, I am not in my usual setup. I am in Gainesville for the Pro Day today. I can't wait for it. And I will say, if I'm not mistaken, my first episode of Locked On Gators ever 2 years ago was talking about the Pro Day with Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney. So it was awesome. But that's obviously to the side now. We're talking about the Florida Gators Pro Day for the 2023 prospects, 2023 NFL draft prospects. And you've got 12 people that are set to be present, or 12 players that are set to be present, 12 athletes, we'll say, since one's not a player, 12 athletes that are set to be present. And we're going to talk about just what this means for so many of them, because I understand the Pro Day is typically thought of as, doesn't mean anything. But for Florida this year specifically, it really does mean something. Like, starting off with Anthony Richardson, we're going to see representation from all 32 teams in Gainesville today, by the way. So everyone gets to see Anthony Richardson do this. And every Pro Day you see someone go viral, or every Pro Day that has an NFL draft quarterback, they tend to go viral because they really uncork one. They pretty much just say, hey, throw that thing as far as you can. And Anthony Richardson, he gonna throw that thing as far as he can. I will say, I don't expect him to do too much testing wise today, just because there's really no point. At the combine, he set just about every record. He became the 10.00 relative athletic score. He became that for the quarterback. He bumped Cam Newton down to a 9.99 because he's that athletic. So Anthony Richardson, testing wise, I don't think there's anything for him to gain. So I don't think he does the testing because, like I said, there's nothing for him to gain, and he does risk injury. So he's probably not going to test. However, he is going to uncork a long ball. And the passing for him does matter, because personally, I don't think his combine performance was super impressive as a passer, which is, I think, fair to say. And the combine, it's hard for a lot of quarterbacks because you're throwing to people that you've never thrown to before, except for, if you get matched up with Anthony Richardson and Justin Shorter running the route, but the odds of that happening are slim. Or if you get matched up with any quarterback throwing to any of their receivers, but the odds of that are slim. So for Anthony Richardson, the throwing does matter because he's going to throw in front of all these teams, and I get it. Throwing on air, unscripted plays, scripted throws, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But for him, if he can really show improved accuracy just from the end of the season to today, that's going to help him. Another guy that could help himself quite a bit is Osiris Torrence, who, congratulations to Osiris for yesterday unveiling his brick for being an All-American Florida Gator. He's not an awesome athlete, right? I think most of us acknowledge that, and his performance at the combine, less than stellar as far as athletic testing goes. But if he can improve on some of those numbers, he's going to help himself out quite a bit. Like, he was a fringe first-round guy before the combine. He was a fringe first-round guy. Towards the end of the season, he was, 25th to 40th was his kind of draft range. And since the combine, because his performance at the combine was pretty rough, even though we know he's not an athlete, I hurt him a tiny bit. So if he can show up and just improve on these explosive numbers, if he can improve that vertical, because that does show your explosiveness a bit, if he can improve on those explosives and doing the on-field drills, if you can look, let's say, a little more nimble than he looked before, he can help himself. Like, he can go from fringe first round 25 to 40 range to 23 to 34 35 range, and that's a money difference. Like getting there would be big for him. And yeah, he's not known for his athleticism. He shouldn't have been expected to test well at the combine, but I don't think he was expected to test as poorly as he wound up testing at the combine. So if he can improve on those, he can help himself a lot. And the last player to talk about in this segment, at least, Gervon Dexter. I don't know what he's going to do testing-wise, because similar to Anthony Richardson, Gervon Dexter had an awesome combine performance. So I don't know what we'll see from him testing-wise. But I do know that he's another one where if he can improve on his agility drills, he's going to help himself a bit. Because I get it, defensive lineman agility drill is not a huge thing, but his were kind of rough. Maybe more importantly for Gervon Dexter, if he improves his bench, he can help himself, because his bench was bad. And he doesn't get the, I don't want to say excuse, but he doesn't get the mulligan of going, he's got insanely long arms, so that makes a lot of sense. Because he does have long arms, but they're not insane. Like, he's not Kevin Durant out there. So if he can improve that bench, he'll answer some questions about his physical ability, where we know he's got a great first step. We know he plays with power in his legs. See it more from his hands, more hand fighting. Watching him do the drills is going to help him. I would imagine we see him, if you watch the NFL Combine, the hoop, drop the towel, or pick up the towel, drop the towel, all that stuff, then you can watch that and you can see, okay, like he's going to get moving a little bit, and we'll see some improvement from him. I also apologize if you can hear a fan in the background. It's just the Airbnb I'm in. It just decides to come on every now and then. I don't know if it's on a timer or temperature or what, but I can't control it. But we're about to take a look at some defensive players that kind of need to improve their performance or get a chance to perform for the first time in front of NFL executives. But first, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook and the official sponsor of Locked On, because new customers, you get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Also, if you place a $25 bet on who's going to win the World Series, because today is opening day, then you get two 50% profit boosts on FanDuel to use on the MLB. I can't wait. Like, I could tell you now, I bet on the Mets to cover a 1.5-point run line against the Miami Marlins today. I'm going to take Scherzer. I don't care. I don't care. I understand that it's very not likely. That's why the odds are plus 146 on it. But it's Scherzer. I'm a Mets fan. You're going up against Alcantara. I get it. He's great. But I'm taking Max Scherzer. Like, I'm doing it. I don't care. So you can go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get those bonus bets if it's your first bet. Even if it's not your first bet, you can get that $25 on the World Series to get two 50% profit boosts. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And I will say, depending on how timing works out, we might have 2 Thursday episodes this week instead of a Thursday and a Friday episode, just because it might just be how timing works out for things. I would love to get pro day interviews and everything out publicly, so we might go with that. But looking at defensive players that either need to improve or for the first time get to work out in front of these NFL executives, I'm starting with the need to improves. Trey Dean III and Rashad Torrence II, the 2 starting safeties from 2022, who I know Florida Gators fans, you don't love too much. A lot of you don't love them, but look, plain and simple, regardless of whether or not you like them or regardless of whether or not you hate them, both of them had absolutely terrible performances at the combine last month. It was just bad. Like, there's no other way to put it. They stunk up the place. They could really use a strong performance here. because they kind of need it, right? They kind of need that strong performance after what was, again, awful. They both ran, I think they had 2 bottom 5 40-yard dashes from safeties, which granted, you could say the 40-yard dash is what it is. It's not necessarily super translatable. Maybe the flying 20 is more appropriate for that. The flying 20, by the way, is when you take the 20-yard split, or you take the total 40 time and you subtract the 20-yard split. That's the last 20 yards when they're really going. That's why it's called the flying 20. Thanks, Rick Spielman. But for Trey Dean, I will say this. Trey Dean III, I get it. He is the Florida Gators safety that is probably more disliked by Florida Gators fans, which could be because of his play or some of the off-field stuff. But it's important to note that Trey Dean at the Shrine game earlier this year had an awesome performance, defensive MVP. He had a great Shrine Bowl performance, okay? It's also important to note that at the Shrine game and at the Combine, he got to go through interviews with NFL teams. So this will be, for pretty much every NFL team, their third time seeing him. All 30 were at the Shrine game, or all 32 were at the Shrine game. All 32 were at the Combine. Obviously, all 32 are expected to be at the Pro Day today. So for Trey Dean, this is important for him as well, because guess what? You need to perform well. This is the third time seeing them. And while we can say he had an awesome performance, he had all that, the interviews matter, which from what I heard weren't amazing. I'll say that. So being here, I think you have to show that you can be better than your combine performance, because there are some teams that are going to look at your athletic testing and say, nope, take them off the board. That's just the nature of the beast. It's just true. I know the Green Bay Packers, I think their number is a relative athletic score of 8. If you're below 8, they will take you off the board because teams want athletes. And if your relative athletic score is below an 8, you're relatively unathletic. So you're going to be taken off that board. So for Trey Dean, you've been in front of these guys multiple times. You played well in front of them. You maybe didn't interview great in front of them, and you tested poorly in front of them. You need to test better so you then have your two-thirds of your opportunities were strong, because you had great Shrine Bowl, bad combine. What's your pro day going to be? And your testing probably matters more, and like your on-field drills probably matters more than your testing. At linebacker, Amari Burney, Ventrell Miller. This is a fun one because for both of them, this is the first time that you get to test in front of NFL personnel. Amari Burney was at one of the college all-star games. He got to play in front of a lot of NFL players, a lot of NFL coaches, but was not a combine invite. I know that there was another bowl game that had him listed as undrafted, and that was their draft range for him. It wasn't 6th or 7th round. It was that, hey, we think Amari Burney is an undrafted quality player. He's probably going to annihilate these interviews because, again, combine, he wasn't there. He didn't get to interview with a lot of these teams. The all-star game, not every team probably sat with him for an extended period of time and got to interview him. So for Amari Burney, this is your time where you have to test well in front of these NFL executives and front office personnel. And if they interview you, you have to do well. For Amari Burney might have actually the most important testing right now, or the most important pro day, because you have to do well. Your film is not great. You were significantly improved in 2022 compared to the rest of your career. Your film still wasn't great. Ventrell Miller, coming off a foot injury, maybe he gets a mulligan. He wasn't able to participate in the combine a month ago. Maybe he gets a little bit of a mulligan of going, okay, well, you didn't get a full pre-draft cycle. You did get to interview in front of NFL teams, and knowing Ventrell just as a person and as a player and as a leader, probably annihilated those. So we'll see what he fully does testing, or if he tests fully. But for Amari Burney, it's very important to have a strong pro day performance. Whether you talk testing or drills, got to have it. And last, Brenton Cox Jr. He was at the combine, and I would imagine that a good deal of NFL teams interviewed him. And if they didn't interview with him, it was probably because they just took him off the board completely. So I don't think the testing matters for him. I don't even think the on-field drills matter for him too much. We know what he is, and we've known what he is in Gainesville for 2 years now. Another workout, not going to change that unless he's significantly better or worse. But for Brenton Cox Jr., if you get the opportunity to interview in front of these NFL teams, you have to do well. Like, you have to, because your reputation is not great amongst NFL personnel. And that's not me making that assumption based off of, what we as Gators fans know about Brenton Cox. That's not me making that assumption of getting kicked off and dismissed from Georgia and Florida. That's me from what I've spoken from NFL personnel and executives that I've spoken to. They're not big fans of Brenton Cox Jr. as a person. So for him, if you get the opportunity to interview in front of these guys, you have to crush it. No other way around it. Flipping to the offensive side of the ball to wrap up, Richard Gouraige. I don't know fully what he's going to be doing, because he had that. It was a really weird situation for him where he was at the combine. He was supposed to participate in the combine, and then they did some kind of stress test, or I think they called it a pain threshold test at the combine, and that injured his ankle reportedly. So injured at the combine before doing testing, before doing any drills, didn't participate. So he did get to do the interviewing part, which is, for a lot of guys and for someone like Richard Gouraige, probably the more important part for him. But if he is healthy enough to be a full go for this combine, for this pro day, that could be big for him. Like, testing will matter for him. Again, participating would matter. Doing the interviews matter more, but testing could definitely help him. So if he tests, he'll help. If he doesn't test, I would hope that we at least see him participate in the on-field drills. What that'll look like, if we'll see mirror drills, we'll see. But if he does participate, that'd be great for him. And again, even if he doesn't test, just the on-field drills could matter. And then we have a bunch of guys that we haven't really seen much of this cycle for Gators fans. You had Justin Shorter, who's had an awesome pre-draft process so far. Hopefully, he can continue it today. Because again, he tested through the roof. He's got great size. He's got solid film. He had a strong Shrine week. So for Justin Shorter, great. Jordan Pouncey is the guy that's working out that, we've seen still staying with the Florida Gators program after graduating. We did not see him at any of the college all-star games. He was not an NFL combine participant. So for Jordan Pouncey, this is your first time, really, that you get to interview with these NFL teams, unless they've come and specifically sought after you, which, given how minimally he played or participated with the team since he's gotten to Gainesville, they probably haven't done. So for Jordan Pouncey, this is very big for him. And look, I have no problem saying I'm someone who's been pretty high on Jordan Pouncey and what he can become, but he has not put it together. And I've been high on him since he was at Texas. He just has not put it together. So we'll see, but I'm honestly just hoping that he puts up some kind of workout numbers to get an opportunity. He's weird size-wise, where you can say, all right, he could play out wide, he could play in the slot, we could play him as a bit of a wide back. So if he could put up some solid testing numbers and get an NFL team to go, let's talk to this kid, or if he could put up some solid reps on field, maybe an NFL team will go, let's talk to this kid. And so we can hope that we see that, just to get an opportunity, because Jordan Pouncey is obviously the one where we have not really seen much from him. And that's, we'll say, less than ideal for him. Obviously, hopefully he gets something. Maybe he pops while he's running routes for Anthony Richardson. Maybe he pops. Who knows? And then the last person is Dedrick Vanover, who's a track and field athlete, played high school, but track and field athlete that's not a college football player. He is attempting to become the next track and field guy turned NFL player, and he'll probably never intend on being really a super starter. But if he can contribute in some way, special teams, we'll see. I would imagine that for Dedrick Vanover, we see him run routes with Justin Shorter and Jordan Pouncey. We'll probably see him run those routes. I think the interesting part here is we'll probably see him field kicks or punts in some way. What extent that'll be, if that's the jugs machine or if that's actually having a kicker or punter out there do them, then sure, maybe we'll see that. But I don't know, maybe we watch him operate in coverage with Trey Dean and Rashad Torrence. There's a lot of ways you can use him. Maybe he's the one that runs running back routes for Anthony Richardson, because I feel like at the pro day, you'll probably see running back run angle routes or wheels or something like that to get the quarterback to just show that he could throw these different kinds of routes, especially for Anthony Richardson, who didn't throw to the running back frequently. So it'll be nice to see. And maybe we see something. But for Dedrick Vanover, if he tests as fast as he can and he shows something with his agility, he could earn a preseason invite. So for Dedrick Vanover, who knows? Maybe it'll happen. The NFL is always willing to take swings on athletes. So maybe that's how we go. But thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back either later today or tomorrow. We'll see how the pro day goes and timing-wise, because I do have to travel back home, which is why we might also have 2 shows today instead of a Friday show. But for Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole 9 Sports, Giants Country, and NFL 33. And I will see you all when I see you. I don't want to commit to what day that's going to be, but I will see you all again.